This video shows you how to build a database for an asset management system. Let's start with looking what we expect from such a system. I have three requirements. The first one is that it is a centralized repository for all my assets, where I am able to track who is the current user of an asset and who are the past users. I also want to be able to detect if a replacement is required and to perform that replacement. Second requirement is issue management. If something is broken with the asset or something needs to be fixed, I want to be able to report it and do the follow-up until the issue has been closed. And finally, there's the maintenance. The main difference between an issue and maintenance is that you cannot schedule an issue. It can happen at any time, while maintenance is scheduled beforehand, and I can do the follow-up of my maintenance. Let's have a look at my solution. First of all, I have a table with the assets where an asset has an ID, it has a name, serial number, it has a cost, purchase date, retirement date, and so on. I check my current user, it has the status, and it has links to issues tables, assignment tables. So an asset can be assigned multiple times to different users. I have my maintenances and so on. Second is the assignments table. So here you can see all the assignments. So for example, this phone, it has been assigned to Jane until the 31st of January, and then it has been assigned to Clayton. So one asset can be assigned over time to different users. I also have my issues. Those are all the reported issues over here, and I have multiple views. So I can say only show me those that are not resolved. I also have multiple view types in my assets table, so I can show all my assets stacked by their status. For example, if an asset goes into maintenance, I can drag it from active to in maintenance. This is my maintenance table here. So all the maintenances again have a unique ID that is auto-generated. So if I create a new record, I have a new ID. I assign an asset to it, has a certain type of maintenance. I can schedule it and I update the status once it is completed. So now that we have taken a look at the final solution, let's have a look at how we come up with this solution. So let's dive into the building process. And we are going to do the building in two steps. First step is modeling the database. Second step is creating the database, because it's important to first think what you want to model. What type of database do you want? Which tables are required? So let's set up the database model. The main table is my assets table. And the first thing I do is thinking about all the characteristics of an asset. And I come up with, okay, it must have a unique ID, a serial number, a name, a category, it has a cost, a purchase date, a warranty, date I need to replace it. It comes in a certain condition, it's assigned to someone, it has a status, can have issues, maintenances, and finally a replacement with a different asset. So those are my characteristics. And the first thing I'm going to do is detecting one-to-many relationships. And a one-to-many relationship means one asset can have multiple ... but that thing is always about one asset. And if I go over all my fields, well, for example, an asset that has multiple names, that has multiple IDs, and so on. But my assignments, like I mentioned, it's required to track history. My assignments are stored in a separate table, because an asset can have multiple assignments. Until 2025, it can be assigned to person A, and from that point on, it can be assigned to person B. So one asset has multiple assignments, but an assignment is always about a single asset. Same with issue. An asset can have multiple issues, but if I report an issue, it's always about a single asset. And the same for maintenances. Also, I want to detect the one-to-many relationships the other way around. And there I have my category. So an asset has always one category, but one category can have multiple assets. So it's possible to have a separate table for the categories, but in this case, I'm going to use a single select field to handle the category. So it's up to you if you want to store it in a separate table, yes or no. Next, we are looking to the many-to-many relationships. So where you say an asset has many something, and one something is about multiple assets. If this is the case, it requires an intermediate table, but in this use case, we don't have such relations, so we don't have to create additional tables. Which brings us to the one-to-one relationships, and there we have the replacement. An asset has one replacement, so it can only be replaced once. You cannot have multiple replacements for a single asset. And one replacement is always about one asset, which is technically not completely true because a replacement involves two assets, a new one and a replaced one. But those are two different fields in my replacement table. It's always about one single asset that I'm going to replace. So let's review and consider a couple of things. Like I have a field for my ID and my serial number. So I want to have a unique ID, but a serial number is also a unique thing. So can I remove the serial number and use the serial number as ID? Yeah, but I prefer the serial number for the manufacturer of the asset and an internal ID. It's just a personal choice. Also, my purchase date, warranty, and retirement date. Yeah, I can calculate retirement based on the number of years, but I prefer manual input. I'm going to keep those three fields. Something else I need to consider, so I will have a table for my assets, for my assignments, for my issues, for my maintenances, and my replacements. Well, the assignment, it will be done to someone. An issue will be assigned to someone. Maintenance will be performed by someone, and the replacement will be approved by someone. And that someone is always an employee. So I will need an additional table for my employees. And this concludes my database model. I will have tables for assets, assignment, issue, maintenance, replacement, employees, and I can start designing my database. I'll start with creating a new database and offer it a name, Asset Management, for example. And this is my first table, so let's rename it to my employees table. And let's define two employees being Mark and Alan. I create a new table for my assets. I have a name, for example, I have a laptop asset and I have a chair. Let's remove the nodes and active fields because I don't need them, and let's add some fields that I need. For example, the serial number, which will be just a plain text field. Also my category, and like I told in the introduction, this will be a single select field where I can say, okay, this is an IT device or this is furniture, and I can assign a corresponding color that I want to have to it. So yeah, and instead of single select, let's offer it a proper name, category. Another field that I can actually add a lot of fields. Here is the purchase cost. So what did we pay for this device? And I can use the dollar or euro sign as the prefix. I can also do some formatting here. So let's complete this saying 1, 2, 3, XYZ, assigning a category to it and setting the purchase cost. Next table will be my assignments table. And in this table, I'm going to have linked fields because assignments, let's avoid typos here. Assignments will involve an employee where it is assigned to and an asset that is actually assigned. So instead of a name, I want to have an ID over here. And I'm going AS001 because it's my first assignment. The nodes field, I'm going to change this to a link to table field, and I'm going to call this asset. And I make a link to my assets table. So I want also to create a link in my assets table that links to an assignment, but I don't want to have multiple relationships because one assignment is always about one single asset. And for example, I can select a laptop over here. Next, I'm going to add an employee field, and that is the person where it is assigned to. So again, a link to table field, this time to the employees. Also, I want to have a related field in the link table, but I will only have one employee. For example, Mark is getting the laptop. And if I now go back to my employees field, well, I see that assignment has been created. So an assignment assigned to an employee. In my assets, I also have an assignment. The laptop has been assigned once. So further in my assignments table, I want to have a date field with the start of the assignment. So when is the user start using it? And I also want to have my end date. And I can choose between 3 formats, the European, US, or the ISO format. So I can have multiple assignments. I can have assignment 002, where I use the same asset, the laptop, but I assign it to Ellen now. And let's say that Mark started using it a couple of months ago until the date of today. And Ellen starts it from tomorrow, and there's no end date yet because she is still using it. Next table is my issues table. So an issue will also have a unique ID. And I'm going to call it I001 because it's the first issue. And again, we will have linked fields here. So I will have a link to my asset. It's a link to table, both directions, but only one asset can be used. Selecting my assets table here. The issue will be reported by a certain user. So let's call this reported by. And this is a link to my employees. And it will also be assigned to someone. So let's add another link to table field, again to my employees. And I name this assigned to. Okay, let's create it. So, for example, the laptop has been broken. It was reported by Mark, and it is assigned to, well, let's create a new employee here, being the tech guy. And the issue has been assigned to my tech guy. So what has happened now is in my assets table, an additional field issues has been created with all the issues for the assets. In my employees table, I have a lot of linked fields here. So let's remove the notes and active because they are not relevant for an employee. But an employee has assignments, he has issues, and he has issues assigned to them. And just to make this clear, I'm going to rename this and say, okay, those are the reported issues. Just to make a clear distinction, hey, this is what I reported and this is what has been assigned to me. So now we have a couple of tables with some example data that demonstrates the structure, especially the linked fields, how tables are linked to each other. Let's fast forward to complete the database structure. The database is now complete with additional fields for the employees table, additional records, just like the replacements table, maintenance table has been added, and all the tables have gotten some additional fields and some sample data. Now it's the time to add some intelligence to our database, which is now pure static data. So I have a name field, email, and so on. I have my assignments. And now I want to gain some additional knowledge. For example, I want to know how many assets a certain user has and which assets are assigned to a user. So at this time, I have my assignments here. It's the linked field. And I can manually count here that Ali has 4 assets, but I want to know which assets. So let's add a formula field. And I'm going to name my field assigned assets, for example. And I'm going to use a formula here. What I'm going to do is doing a lookup of my linked assignments field. So assignments is referring to this field. And the field I want to see is the asset name. Okay. And now I have a more meaningful name for each asset. If I check my assignments table, this is the unique ID. What I have here is the name of my asset, which is much more meaningful. So let's go back to my employees table. I have my assigned assets, but this is not completely true. This also includes the assets that have returned yet, because you don't have all the assets that are here in assignments. It contains current and future assets. So I need to create a filter here. I'm going to edit the formula, and instead of just a lookup field, I'm going to filter it. And the filter condition, which is the second parameter of the filter function, is also having a lookup in my assignments table. And I'm going to look at the end date. And if my end date is empty, then I know that the asset is still assigned to the current user. So now it filters, and I can see that Elizabeth, for example, only have the IP phone. Donald only has the OnePlus phone. So I know which assets are assigned to an employee. I want to count them. Again, a new formula field, count assets, and this is going to be a formula field where I use the count function around my assigned assets field. And maybe assigned assets is not the best name. Let's call it current assets, because it's the assets that I possess at this moment. So now if I check an employee, for example, Bran, if I check the detail record, I can see, okay, those are all the assets that are currently owned by Bran. Let's have a look at the assets table. And in my assets table, I want to have something similar. I also have the linked field to my assignments table. And now I want to know who is the current user. So I create a field, current user. It's going to be a formula field. And it's going to be very similar to the one I did in the employees table. Again, I'm going to do a filter. I want to do a lookup of my assignments. But in this case, instead of the name of the assets, I want to have the name of my employee. And the filter condition will also be a lookup to my assignments. Again, I will have a look at my end date, and I will check if the end date is empty. And this returns my current user. You can see that it's a gray background, and the gray background is because it returns a list of elements. And that was useful because an employee will always have or can have multiple assets currently using. So this is definitely a list. But in my assets table, if I have a look at my formula field current user, there will only be one user. And in a later stadium, if I want to build an application around it, having this as a lookup field can be a little bit annoying sometimes. So I'm going to use the join function with an empty string as a second parameter, and it will merge all the items in the list to a single text. And since I only have one item in my list, it will actually remove the list and make it plain text, which is much easier to work with in the future. Next thing I like to do is assigning an automatic ID. And this has already been done here. So let's just have a look at the formula. What I do is using the row ID function. And a row ID returns the unique internal ID Baserow offers to this record. So create a new one. Baserow identifies this as the record with ID 24. It's something that you cannot change. It's an ID offered by Baserow. But since this looks a little bit weird and annoying, I'm going to concatenate this and say, okay, this can be asset with a row ID. So I literally put the word asset followed by the ID, which is okay, but I want to have leading zeros in this, and this is why I constructed this formula. If the row ID is smaller than 10, concatenate two leading zeros. If it's smaller than 100, one leading zero. Is it over 100? I don't need any leading zeros. So this is how the unique ID is constructed, and I do it in all the tables, also for my ID, also for the assignments, also for the maintenances, also for the replacement, but each time with a different letter in front to identify what exactly it is. Let's continue with the assets table. So I can create issues for an asset, and this is also linked. So let's find the issues field. Here I have them, issues. But once an issue is closed, it will still be available in this table. And that's not really what I want. I only want to have the issues that are open. So I'm going to create a new formula field, open issues. And again, I am going to filter this using the filter function. Again, for a lookup, this time in the issues table, I want to see the status. And I want to filter those where the status is not resolved. So look up in my issues, the status, and I want to see those where my status is different from exclamation mark equal resolved. Okay. And now I see the status. I see that here I have one issue reported. I have one issue in progress, also reported in progress, and so on. I want to extend this a little bit. And I'm going to use the count function first. So now I count that there is 1 or 0 open issues. And I'm going to wrap it with the if statement, saying if the count is higher than 0, well, in that case, I want to print an icon, otherwise it should just be empty. And let's copy paste my icon somewhere. Just want to show a warning triangle here. So those that have open issues will have a triangle, and I can use this later in my application. It's easy to have just an icon to note which assets have not, which assets do have open issues. Next thing, I want to know the current condition of my asset. So for each assignment, when a asset is returned, I set a return condition. For example, if Clayton is returning this ThinkPad, let's say he returns it today, the operations department of whatever department in charge will say, okay, it's still new, it looks good, or it looks fair. And I want to have this in my assets table. So I don't have this here yet. Let's put it next to the status. So I'm naming this current condition. Again, it's a formula field. And this is a little bit a more complex function, because what I need to check the return condition. So let's do a lookup in my assignments, and I want to know the return condition. So here I see, okay, it's fair, it's new. But here, let's see what asset we are talking about. It's about the Google Pixel. It had 2 assignments. So one time it was good, second time it was fair. And I want to filter this. So I'm adjusting my formula. I'm going to filter this. And I want to know this time where my end date is the maximum end date. So let's quickly make a shortcut here. Okay, so the lookup of my end date, it must be the max end date that is possible. Let's have a look here. And this show me the condition for each item. So it picks the maximum date, and then I have my condition here. Okay, next I want to see which assets has been scheduled for maintenance for this month. So if I have all the maintenances here, I can easily create a new grid and say, okay, for this month, add this, and I'm going to add a filter where the schedule date is within this month. And I see that I have a couple of assets scheduled for this month. So in my assets table, next to these assets, I want to see, okay, those ones are scheduled. So again, let's add a new field. Let's find my maintenance here. And I'm calling this field this month. It's again a formula field, of course, and it's a rather complex formula. So I'm going to filter again. I'm going to do a lookup in maintenances, and the field I want to see is the scheduled date. So when has it been scheduled? And my condition, actually there are two conditions, so I will use the AND function. And my first condition is, okay, I want to look up in maintenances if my status is still scheduled. And this is because I don't want maintenance that has been completed be part of this. So that's my first check. My second check will be that the scheduled date is in the same month as today. And let's quickly copy paste this one and make sure my parentheses make sense. So I say look up my scheduled date and pick the month of my scheduled date and check if this is equal to the month of today. So if I confirm this one, I must have missed a parenthesis somewhere. Let me quickly do a copy paste. Yeah, and then I have one scheduled at the 20th, at the 19th, and at the 12th. So what I've done is look up my scheduled date, check if the status is scheduled, and if my month equals the month of today. So I must have missed a parenthesis somewhere, but okay, I have my final result. And the final thing, in my issues table, or also in my maintenance table, I only see my asset over here. And it only has the ID of my asset. So it would be much more meaningful if I have the name of the asset. And you can quickly do this with a lookup field, calling it asset name. And I can select the name of my asset. But it's also possible to do it with a formula field. And like we did many times before, asset name, it will just offer you the same result. But like we mentioned before, sometimes you want to have plain text because you want to reuse it in an application, or it's better for an API that it just has text instead of the lookup object. So the join function can help with this, and then I have a plain text instead of my lookup list. Okay, so now we have added some intelligence to our tables. We have the employees where we see, okay, those are all the assets. We had added a lot to the assets table. So we see which ones have issues. We can see who is the current user. We can see which asset has maintenance this month. And the final step is now adding views to quickly see or to quickly gain more insights about our data. At the moment, I only have one view for all my assets. And let me first add a color to it. Add a color to the left border based on a condition where I want to add a red border in front of the assets that have active issues. So I created open issues, and if this is not empty, then I want to show the red border. I also want to have a view like that. So let's duplicate my all assets view. I prefer to duplicate views because it keeps sorting, it keeps colors, and I can simply rename it over here. So assets with issues. And only thing I need to do is adding a filter where I check my active issues or my open issues. And if it's not empty, well, then it's added to this view. I can also do a group by over here. So again, I duplicating my all assets view. I'm going to rename it all assets grouped by their current user. And I will add a group by where I select my current user field to group all the items. So those where it is empty, those are the assets that has not been assigned to a user for the moment. where I have a name, well, I can quickly see which user is using which assets. Next, I want to have a Kanban view. So each asset has a status. If I add a Kanban view, I name it stacked by status, adding this view, and I'm using my status here. I can customize it, and for example, the serial number won't tell me that much, maybe, but I want to see my current user. I want to see if there are open issues. Yep, I can want to see the purchase date and cost. And from here on, I can drag and drop them. So if I want to retire a certain asset, I drag and drop it to the retirement. For my maintenances, I want to have a calendar. So those are the maintenances for this month. I want to have a calendar with all my maintenances. I use my scheduled date. And again, here I can start adding labels. I can also do a color here. So for example, the left border is the status. And I don't want to see the ID. I just want to see the name of my asset. Yeah, I can uncheck the ID, and maybe I can also show the description when there is some place to show it. Next, I want be able to report an issue, and that's the final view we are going to create, a form view. And the form view is to add a new issue. And from here on, I can add fields. I can say, okay, what asset is it about? Who has reported it? What's the date? Describe the issue, the status, priority, and so on. Assigning can be done after the issue has been reported. That's more for the follow-up. And if I preview this, well, I can select my asset. I can select a reporter, a date, and I can do a small description over here of my field. So the moment I submit the form, it has been added to my issue table. So instead of adding it in a spreadsheet, I can add it I can add it through my form view. So this concludes the video about building an asset management database. We started with analyzing the requirements. So I now have my central repository for all my assets. I can see my current users. I can see the entire history of assignments. I'm able to manage issues. I can do the follow-up of an issue. For example, I can open an issue over here and say, okay, it's resolved. I can adjust priority. I can do the maintenances, and also I'm having a table for all the replacements.